welcome back to this week's episode of Green Enterprise, a partnership between my company, Digital Venture Partners, and Black Enterprise, where every week I have a conversation with a prominent Black cannabis executive that I feel like is creating inroads for more people to come into the space and find success and creating an example in a new and emerging industry. This week I have with me my good friend Cherron Perry Thomas, the founder of Black Cannabis Week, here to discuss some few initiatives, but she's someone who it has been a guiding light for our people in our space and has made a real effort to create content, moments and events that Black people can attend, empower themselves, inform themselves, and equip ourselves to come into the space. So it's an honor to have you here today.
Well, great. And thank you so much for inviting me to have this conversation around cannabis.
So before we hop into the space and just all of your accomplishments and necessary work, could you give us a backstory of your professional story before you jumped into the space?
Yeah, and that's a good question because, we have to understand how important we can parlay our experience into cannabis. And so for me, I started off as really a health agent. I used to teach plant-based cooking classes. I did that at Whole Foods for 5 years before starting my marketing and sales company, which is called Green Dandelion. And we've directly overseen the launch of over 2,000 products in stores like Whole Foods, Wegmans, and different health food stores throughout the country. And as a result of that experience, I realized how important it was to continue this in cannabis. Many of my first brands that I worked with were actually not in the United States. There was one that was from Canada and another one that was from India. In India, we dealt with hemp textiles and actually being able to import those into the United States. And again, making sure that they had a presence in places like Whole Foods. The other one happened to be a hemp protein. And I didn't understand why people kept asking me, will this make me high? Because back then the Farm Bill Act hadn't been passed. So the only way you can get products like hemp protein was to import them from places like Canada, which is what this one company did. And it was a Canadian based company, and they were innovators in the plant protein. They were able to actually really make a huge impact in the plant-based movement by just adding this one category. When we started with that one brand, it was one brand and maybe one other brand that didn't include hemp. And then it grew and grew and grew. And so now, people have the options. And so my experience with that marketing and sales really led me to learn more about hemp because again, that's what I was selling. And when you look at that picture and you look at the leaf, you automatically think like, oh wow, this is something bad. This is weed, because that's what you see, on some paraphernalia and in merchandise. And so once you start getting farther and deeper past that image, then you understand how key that this plant is in our society and has been in history.
Okay, great. So I want to get into, your larger scope of work, but we have something that's a little pressing. So we're in the midst of Black Cannabis Week, which is an initiative that you founded a few years ago and that I've been fortunate enough to be involved in and educated from myself. So I would love for you to give our viewers an idea of, Black Cannabis Week. What is it and what benefits that, the programming offers for an aspiring professional coming into the space?
So the first time that I went to a cannabis conference, I think out of maybe 300 people, I probably saw maybe three people of color, and one of those happened to be Indian. I went to another conference and it's the same thing. I went to another conference and it was the same thing. And so I felt that I knew a lot of people who, one, were incarcerated due to cannabis possession, distribution, and two, I knew a lot of people who were interested. So being able to put one and two together, I realized just like Black Enterprise, just like Essence Magazine, just like all these other entities, that we needed something for ourselves. And so out of that grew the Cannabis Opportunities Conference, which making sure that people like me would be able to come, reducing any of the barriers, because that's the biggest issue for a lot of us when it comes to cannabis, is just some of those barriers. If that's funding, if that's information, education, networking and connections, if you don't have that, that's a barrier. And so I wanted to make sure that those barriers were reduced. So one, having a conference that really was didn't have any fee, so the conference is free. Two, having a whole conference and room of people who look just like us. So from the doctors to the attorneys to the elected officials, you name it, we bring all of these professionals in this setting, which is Temple University's medical school, into this one really nice setting and have education about conference about cannabis. And so in this conference, the conversation is medical, is economics, and is normally education. And so between all of that, we want to expose people to the opportunities that are in cannabis. So we already know about the statistics. We already know about how it has devastated in our community. So now we need to know about those opportunities in this industry. And so this year we have joined the Black Cannabis Week. And so the Black Cannabis Week has been a virtual event. We have that same professionalism, people who have experience in this industry, to just really have a chat with folks within our community. So it's almost like being, a fly on the wall. So we've started off with history, going on to health. Um, Yesterday was our hemp day. Today was our business day. We have tomorrow, we'll be talking about veterans and some of those issues. And then in person will be the Cannabis Opportunities Conference at Temple, which will include careers, policy, as well as expungements and pardons. So we definitely wanted to really hone in on that and give people the opportunity to come in, to experience career fair, to experience the opportunity to work side by side with lawyers to look at their records. So if it's expungement, if it's pardons, we want to make sure that those barriers are not in place. And most importantly, it's the policy. I live in Philadelphia. And Pennsylvania is actually a commonwealth, which means, unlike some of the other states, we just can't go in and vote for it. So we have to let our elected officials know that this is what we want. And so if this is what we want, we have to be able to know how to speak with them, how to communicate with them, and how to really tell them what some of our needs are. So I think that's how they best serve our community. And so, we're doing the policy summit, and people can definitely view that policy summit if they're in Pennsylvania, if they're in, wherever they are, just to see what some of our elected officials are saying, because who knows, some of this may be an opportunity for someone in another state once they learn about what is happening here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's amazing. One question that I would love to ask you personally, and because when you talk about Black professionalism in cannabis, almost everyone immediately thinks about a state like California or Colorado, right? One of the more developed and more known states, but operating or trying to advance in the Northeast, where you have mostly medical markets. Have you kind of seen any difference as a Black professional? Like, how do you maneuver around in a state that maybe isn't fully legal or fully at a place where, let's say, a California is?
Yeah, so you work within those regulations. And so for me, I have taken this road of education. I have taken the road of preparing people for when that time comes because we know that time is going to come. We don't know when. So we cannot wait until one day they decide to vote and say, the state is now an adult use state, you can use, sell, distribute cannabis. We want to start preparing people now. And I know sometimes people are a little leery, particularly entrepreneurs, of having a job, having a 9 to 5. But I cannot say enough. Look at that 9 to 5 as your investor. Look at that 9 to 5 as your scholarship to teach you the skill set that you need so that when you are ready and when the regulations are up to date in your state, now you're ready to go in and start your business. So for entrepreneurs, please don't look at having a job as something bad. Look at having a job in cannabis as an opportunity to really, um, really open up your business and be able to be successful.
I agree 100%. One of the things that is impressive about Black Cannabis Week is your partnership with Temple University. A lot of institutions are still very conservative around, cannabis education, cannabis events. Um, Me myself, coming from the South, even colleges in the deep South are still very weary of cannabis for various reasons. So what's the importance of being able to partner with a validated institution like Temple to bring your education to the masses?
Yeah, it's very, very important. I tell people I do what I do for the aunties and the grandmas. One, the aunties and the grandmas, they vote and they tell everybody else in the neighborhood and in the household how to vote. So initially, I was interested in going to one of the mega churches in our area. The minister happened to be a new minister at that church, and unfortunately, he was very familiar because he come from the pharmaceutical business, and I think he may have come from the West Coast. So he was really, really interested. However, I think the board did vote them down. So I want to be in a place where Black people are. Black people are in churches, Black people are in politics, and Black people are in professional settings like educational institutions. And so I felt that it was important to actually partner with Temple University, because it is also one of the colleges that is in what we call North Philly here, and that's traditionally a Black neighborhood. And in my district, and working with my senator as well as my state rep, making it possible to actually have it at Temple. Another thing to know about Pennsylvania is that we have several institutions here. Most of the institutions in Philadelphia, they all have research license. Um, so Temple happens to be one of those, and having it in a medical setting too, it gives it a notch up because a couple of things that we listen to in our community besides social media, one is the doctors and one is the pastors. So I felt having it affiliated with a medical school would be a huge plus because, again, people will feel comfortable coming there as, maybe opposed to a hotel or I don't know, the convention center. So having it here, it just makes sense because we are about education. We are in an educational setting. They have everything that we need to further educate people. It's a comfortable setting. It's a beautiful setting there, at the medical school.
So my next question for you would be, I've had the privilege of having several conversations with you, but as an educator, what is some of the most common misconceptions that you come across within cannabis or the industry that like you just have to continually, correct or re-educate people on? Are there any like common misconceptions that you always have to solve?
Yeah, so I mean, the stigma is real. The stigma is very, very real, and especially in our community, and I get it. A lot of it is historical and it hurts. I mean, many people and families are still suffering from this war on drugs, which we all know was a war on people. And so, one of the things that I do hear people say is that, "Oh, I'm going to get high," or they're going to get high. They're People are very concerned about that. They're very concerned about a smell. They're very concerned about anything that has to do with smoking, not understanding that this this plant has elevated in so many ways, in terms of now have it in edibles or foods, that you can actually ingest. So if that's a dropper, if that's a lotion, if that's a cream, if that is a beverage, one of the fastest growing industries in cannabis is actually the beverage industry. And you have many huge corporations that are now moving into this industry. I know that there's a well-known beer company, that has a brand that is sold throughout dispensaries on the West Coast. So many of the, I think, misconceptions about cannabis, um, come from some of the old movies that people have seen, and not understanding that microdosing is something that has really evolved. So people know how to use cannabis if that's for their condition, if that's for uh, whatever, for their adult use consumption. Many people now know how to use cannabis for their needs. And so I think the misconception that people have is that it will take them someplace else.
Right. And normally I towards the end of the interview, I ask about federal legalization, but I have a particular question that I want to ask you because you see the development of so many of us come through the space and thrive or figure out how to exist here. Um, what do you think what happens if Black people don't take this opportunity seriously in the cannabis space, right? We're obviously underrepresented. We're obviously not at the table in a lot of conversations. And, I think we both fear that we don't jump on this in a timely way. So what do you think could happen or the shape this industry could take if Black people aren't seriously involved?
Just like everything else. I mean, we've seen it. The cable industry came in and came through, and that went past. The tech industry came in, and it's still coming in, and it's still passing. And so now we have this industry. The only difference between those other two industries and this one is that we, as a people, as a community, have been sorely impacted by it. And so this is really our opportunity, to reclaim a lot of what was lost. So it may not be in my lifetime, it may not even be in your lifetime, but it will be in future generations' lifetime that they will have education. I know here in Pennsylvania, we actually have a hemp curriculum. So professors, teachers, educators have to really start helping the youth understand what this industry is and how they can see themselves in it. Because I continuously say that if you don't see yourself, then no one else will. And that is the problem, is that we have not seen ourselves in it. When most people talk about they want to be in the cannabis industry, the first two things you hear is like, I want a dispensary or I want a grow facility, not understanding that wherever you are in your professional development, unless you just totally want to pivot, you can fit into this industry because everything that we are already doing, from security to marketing to social media to, I mean, you name it. There's so many things that we can do in this industry. And so we have to take that skill set and now parlay that into this. And so if we right now don't start really doing our own like this is a great opportunity for people to learn. But if we don't start doing our research, then we're just going to be from somebody else. And they're only going to give us what they want us to have. And so by us doing the research, by us forming our own think tanks, our own cooperatives, our own organizations, whatever that is, we need to do that, and we need to do that now and start working on it, not trying to recreate or fit into a hole that we cannot fit in. We just need to create our own. And so that's where the opportunity is, because again, there's just so much that's needed. So this industry is just, I mean, we are just really on the tip of the needle when it comes to this industry. Like they hadn't seen us, they hadn't seen the hot sauce yet. And as soon as that happens, that $17.5 billion that it brought in last year during COVID, it's probably going to double, triple, but we have to see ourselves in it. We have to be the ones to come into this industry and make it what it is that we want it to be. Because right now it's not inclusive. There are too many barriers. And so we want to make sure that as we move forward, there be more of us, which is again, bringing more of us together is a way for us to have these conversations, for us to see each other and know that you're not the only one, and know that we have each other and we can do more in this industry when we are together.
Spoken like a true expert educator. It's an honor to have a conversation with you. I'm super excited about Black Cannabis Week. When our viewers see this, it'll be 5 o'clock this Friday. So I would love for you to wrap up in like the last minute or two, what they can look forward to on Friday and through the weekend, and then also where they can follow you and Black Cannabis Week to just consume some of this valuable information.
Yeah, so you can follow Black Cannabis Week on Instagram as well as Facebook. The website is blackcannabisweek.com. And same thing for me. You can follow me there. You can also follow me at We Are DACO. That's DACO. That's WEARE DACO or DACO. And in terms of what we can expect at 5 o'clock on Friday, I would say look forward to getting some good rest, because on Saturday, we are starting at 10 o'clock with our career fair. So we have a career and an expungement fair, and we have a career expo. The at career expo is for those people who have some professional skill set. The fair is more for entry level, but we have many companies that are coming, and they're in different states, and they are coming to hire people who look like us. We also will be having our I think I mentioned our expungements and our pardons. So part of that process is working side by side with attorneys. On top of that, we have a expo. So that expo in that exhibit area will allow people to talk to other professionals, circulate information, and network. Again, because of COVID, we did not want to have, full capacity like we did pre-COVID, which was over 700 people. So we sort of want to minimize it and put things in different pockets. So you're either in career, you're in expungements and pardons, or you're at the exhibit floor. So out of all of that, you are definitely going to go home with something. And I can't say enough how people come and it's like a family reunion, and but not a family reunion where you've met people that you know and you sing, but a family reunion where you have now met everybody who looks like you doing the same thing as you. And so it just, somebody, we had someone who once said, like, oh wow, this is like the Wakanda of cannabis. And I just have to say, yes, it is. It's like the Wakanda of cannabis, because you have people who are looking to move forward in this industry. And that's what we need. We need people who are looking forward, but also having that hand stretched back to pull each other up. I can't tell you how much networking has taken place here. So it's great. Again, um, follow us at Black Cannabis Week, or definitely message us on Instagram, as well as the email is on the website.
And also, what's the address if they're in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about being here. We're in the tri-state area. You can be in New York, DC, Baltimore, Jersey. It's 3500 North Broad Street. So that's North Philadelphia. So if you want a Philly cheesesteak, it's a good place right down the street from there. You will see everything you needed to see in Philly in that one block.
Thank you so much, Cherron. It was an honor to have this conversation. I look forward to seeing your success in the future and our viewers being smart enough to take advantage of your Black Cannabis Week programming.
Thank you so much.